you know about him?
Of course. Do you think he's coming back?
I don't know.
What are you?
I'm Gotham's reckoning.
I'm not afraid. I'm angry.
Mr. Wayne.
Remember where you parked?
Must have lost my ticket.
Your wife said you were taking a cab home.
My wife?
Don't worry, Master Wayne. Takes a little time to get back in the swing of things.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to Geekfest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone, and joining me today I have James. Say hi, James.
Hello, hello.
We are getting together today to go over and review one of what could be considered the summer's last big blockbuster, The Dark Knight Rises. Now, we've seen it separately in different screens and somewhat different formats, if you will. And, we have different opinions on the matter. Let's begin, James, by telling me where you saw it and what format and everything.
I saw it in a Sony theater in Manhattan, and it's considered one of the best. It's uptown. It's realistic, genuine, life-size IMAX screen. I know a lot of the theaters are using IMAX in their advertising, but they're not really an IMAX screen. It's kind of like a half IMAX screen, but people are accepting it as IMAX. But this one is the genuine article. I've seen a couple other films there. Specifically, I saw Attack of the Clones when that was reformatted for the IMAX format. And I love this theater. It really is an impressive screen, great sound, and I'm glad I saw it there because I had no intention of seeing this movie in the theater, and it really made it a better experience by seeing it the right way in the proper IMAX format.
Well, I saw it in a regular theater here in Jersey because I was looking into seeing it at what's considered to be the real IMAX one. And the closest real IMAX that I have, for whatever crazy reason, they were charging something like, I think it was something like $24, $25 a ticket. And I was like, you know what? I don't think that's going to happen. I know this is a big movie for the summer, but I decided to kind of stay local and pay basically about probably close to half that price per ticket. And I was able to see it in a large, obviously not official IMAX, but a large enough screen that I didn't notice, a lack of anything as far as that goes. And, I did notice the switches when you go into IMAX mode, when the screen gets a little larger than before. But as far as the presentation itself, I was completely happy with it. Obviously, this is in a 3D film, so you don't have that extra 3D feature that a lot of these modern films seem to have these days, especially all these summer blockbustery type of things. But I was very pleased. I went to see it with my son, and we showed up something like, I think we were there like an hour and a half to 2 hours before the movie started, just in case, because we were scared. I mean, we're always scared every time we go see one of these huge films that we're going to show up and there's going to be about 800 people there just waiting. And I'm glad we went early because if you show up, at least in my theater, within a half hour, you're going to have a rough time looking for seats. And as we were sitting inside waiting for the movie to start, we kept noticing, kept getting fuller and fuller and fuller. And it got to the point where people are still walking in while they're playing the trailers. And it's like, these people are crazy. Don't they understand? I mean, normally you shouldn't wait that long to get into a movie theater, especially with the premiere of Batman, because we saw it on the first day. We didn't do the midnight thing. I think we did like the Friday thing. And we saw it in the afternoon, and it was just like, these people just don't get it.
So you saw it on an opening weekend?
Oh, yeah. We saw it on a Friday. And like I said, there were people walking in, and the only seats that were left would be like the extreme corners of the movie theater up front, where, the screen was so big that if you sit up front, it is impossible to enjoy a film. And a few people actually walked out, I think, because they realized they showed up too late and they were going to have to sit in the worst seats. But that's why I'm glad we went early. Granted, like I said, we went way too early, but it's worth it for this kind of a film.
Well, I saw it 3 weeks after opening day on a Thursday night at a 10:50 showing, as I said, in Manhattan. And let me tell you, it was probably half to three-quarters filled on that night at 10:50 3 weeks later.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I got there probably 20 after 10, and I had a pretty good selection, but I noticed there probably was maybe 20% of the theater filled, and there are some good seats, and obviously the center, a little higher up. Most theaters, the middle is better. This one, it's a mixed bag from the middle up, and there are some key seats in the back row that seem to be like in sections of 4, which are nice if you're with a group of 4 people. And I had no problem. It was center. I had a nice selection because we were there, but that place was, like I said, almost three-quarters filled 3 weeks later. And I was shocked. I didn't expect that.
Well, it's not surprising considering that the film managed to stay number 1, I think, for about 3 weeks. It explains that it was still a popular film. And even though it's not number 1 anymore, or currently, this particular week we're recording the show, it's still in the top 5, chugging along at this point. But let's switch and talk a little bit about the actual film. Obviously, this is the 3rd installment and technically final from what we understand, having to do with Christopher Nolan, the director, and the lead characters that he basically put together, that being Christian Bale as Batman. A lot of people mention that this film is kind of like a bookend. In other words, not only does it wrap up the story, but it kind of brings you back to the beginning of Nolan's Batman to brings it kind of full circle. There's a lot of elements from the first film that I found in this film, and it also seems to have a slightly different tone as the second film. But why don't we go a little bit over the story, the plot of what's this one about?
Well, I recall we first got our glimpse of this movie back, I guess it was in the fall or around Christmas time.
Yes.
And I think we did a little presentation on it, and we were both pretty impressed with what we saw. I love Batman. I'm a huge comic Batman fan. I'm especially a fan of the Batman animated series, which to me is as good as Batman could get in at least the past 25 years. And I was thrilled that Nolan was going in the direction he did with his series. I didn't mind the first one. I could take it or leave it, but I did enjoy it. The second one, I know it's going to, kill a lot of people. I absolutely disliked it. And I'm sorry to speak ill of the dead. I think Heath Ledger went way overboard, and I understand he was taking the Joker into his most crazy limit, but I thought it was just too much. And I think a lot of people gave his role more courtesy than it probably would have gotten if he had not died. I don't think it would have made as much money as it did. I think it was a testament to his work that people just kept going and going for the second movie. And I thought there's no way this third movie is going to be any good because it just got way out of hand there. But, I was very, very impressed. And having seen it, I had no intention of seeing it in a theater. As I told you, 3 weeks later, I relented. A friend of mine who had seen it 11 times, if you can believe that, said, come on, you got to go see it. You got to go see it. And I relented, and I was thrilled with it. And having been such a big Batman fan, Bane is a character who's very important in the comic book and was one of the key characters to the downfall of Batman in the early 90s. And it was very, very closely represented on screen. Obviously, for a movie, there's a lot of extra stuff and there's some characters left out. But I think Nolan did a good job in trying to get that feel and then make it his own as well as Christian Bale making the character's, downfall and resurrection, thus the title, The Dark Knight Rises. And I was overwhelmed that I liked it so much, and it was a very powerful movie.
Well, this film connects in a way, like I said before, to the first film more than the second film. The connection to the second film is mainly because of, at the end of the second film, Batman is left in a stage where he's kind of taking the fall for the death of Harvey Dent and all the bad things that Harvey Dent did, which he's going to take the blame for it. And he is kind of like going into hiding. He's going to become a wanted man, basically. The cops are coming after him. So that's how we wrap up the second film. And this one opens up, he's been away for a long time, off the bat. It takes about 8 years, I believe, between, right, between The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. And, the city's doing pretty well. Crime is, more or less under control. And, there are people who are kind of searching for Batman to find out, where he went. And even Bruce Wayne, he's become a recluse in the meantime.
You would think people would put 2 and 2 together and realize, hey, Bruce Wayne has been out of sight for such a long time. And hey, wait a minute, so is Batman.
Well, it's kind of like the Superman, Clark Kent thing. His glasses are unbelievable. So as this is happening, we catch up to what's going on with Bruce Wayne. We are then introduced to the bad guy du jour. Bane seems to be the big baddie in charge of some kind of weird plan that he has, plotting together, having to do with robbing certain people, kidnapping certain people, getting together these criminal elements in a plan that seems to be, at first, it's kind of like he wants to take over the city. He's not necessarily trying to look for Batman. He's kind of teasing Batman in a way to come out and show himself, kind of. And as we progress with the story, we start meeting some new characters we never met before. We meet a cat burglar who is supposed to be Catwoman. Even though they're never referred to her as Catwoman, it's a Catwoman type of character. We meet what at first appears to be some kind of a entrepreneur who she's into free energy and this and that, and she starts to help Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne kind of starts coming out, and at the same time Batman starts coming out also in terms of,
I think her name was Miranda Tate.
Right. And from what I understand, if you follow the comics, this character actually existed in comic form. As the story progresses, we find out that Bane is really up to really weird stuff. We find out that he was in a prison, and Batman eventually gets into a big fight with Bane. He's hurt, critically hurt, and Bane kind of shoves him in this prison somewhere in a foreign country. And while he's in there, he finds out the story about some prisoner who had a baby who apparently was married to Liam Neeson's character from the first film.
Ra's al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul. And we are kind of led to believe at that point, in that middle point of the film, that Bane is the baby. Bane is the child that actually was able to escape this prison. So the story progresses, and, Bane is taking over the city, and they're trying to figure out a way of rescuing everybody because, obviously, this is a comic book character. There's this big bomb. There's always some kind of big bomb, and the big bomb is going to go off, and Batman is still in the prison, and he's trying to get out, and eventually he gets out, as usual. That's the way it works, right about the time where the bomb's about to go off. And the climax of the movie is basically us finding out that, guess what? Bane is really not the guy in charge. The person in charge is really this new pseudo love interest of Batman, who is Miranda Tate, whose real name apparently is Talia.
Well, let's just say it. She's Ra's al Ghul's daughter.
Right. At the end, she's the big baddie, basically. And the showdown is that Batman has to grab the bomb, which is funny because in a way, it's like I keep remembering the old Batman TV show where Batman grabs that big round-looking bomb like something out of Donkey Kong or something and is running around trying to dispose of the bomb. Well, in this film, in a way, it's kind of funny because it's not funny, but it's ironic because he kind of takes the bomb and you're led to believe that he's going to sacrifice himself and take the bomb away into the sea so the bomb could explode away from the citizens, of Gotham. And it does. The bomb goes off and you get the feeling that, okay, that's the end of Batman. But at some point during the end, you have this kind of like an epilogue. I wouldn't call it a cameo or an extra scene. It's an epilogue with another one of the new characters. Right. Where you learn that this young cop, this, very idealistic young cop who's helping out to try to get Bane out of there and to catch the bad guys and to help Commissioner Gordon defeat, all these criminals that Bane has gathered. We find out that at the end, his real name apparently is Robin.
Yeah, it's one of the worst kept secrets in the whole filming of this movie was who Joseph Gordon-Levitt was actually going going to be playing. And it was, an idealistic young do-gooder or police officer, or whatever they were saying, Nolan was saying, or people were saying. But it was clearly there was a tie into it that it was Robin, and it was. But it's an inventive way. I wasn't displeased.
We'll talk about that a little later because it's a little left to your imagination as to exactly what kind of Robin he's going to be.
Yeah.
As the film ends, we find out that Batman is not dead. He actually went away, and he's living with Catwoman out in Italy, probably. He's trying to have a family, and he's left everything basically to...
Well, we don't know about a family, but he's trying to have a relationship that doesn't involve a cape and a
Exactly.
cowl.
He wants to stay out of the limelight, basically, and not be Batman anymore. But he leaves everything to this Robin character, who, we don't know if he's going to use the name Robin. His name is John Blake, his cop name, but apparently, he was an orphan.
Yeah, he apparently resigns as a police officer, so you would assume he will be involved somehow in crime fighting because of his nature, but it seems to be he would either be taking over the Batman reins or another type of crime fighter, which I would say not quite Robin as we know him with the tights and the green and red outfit and yellow outfit, but more like a Nightwing kind of character, probably, if I had to guess. He's not going to be quite Batman, but he's going to be a crime fighter of some sort.
Right. Like I said, it's left up to be interpreted by the viewer how far you want to take it. But let's actually discuss the movie itself.
Well, let me turn the tables quite quickly. What most impressed you about this movie?
One of the best things I liked about it is how they connected it to the first one. The connection, when I use the term bookend, it's really a strong bookend. Most of the connections in this film come back to the first film, comes back to why he became Batman, comes back to how the image of Ra's al Ghul is still bothering him. It's something that still gnaws at him. And then the connection with the bad guys that are so connected to Ra's al Ghul is also gigantic. It's a long movie. It almost felt like a director's cut of the film because they give you just about everything. And the action sequences are amazing. The technology, we get to see the Bat, which is a sort of flying plane helicopter that he has. They give us a Catwoman type of character who I think she did an excellent job. It wasn't too much. It wasn't too campy or anything. She's a cat burglar. She's like a professional thief. And, it works pretty well. Bane was a pretty big, menacing type of character, very different than previous bad guys. With the Joker in the previous film, he was more like a psychological bad guy, more like a Hannibal Lecter type Batman. He's not so much physical, he's mentally gets under your skin. Bane is the opposite in a way. He just breaks you, and that's exactly what he does to Batman.
What most impressed me with this movie was how they were able to take the Nightfall series of comics from 1993 and actually bring them to the screen. So many of these comic book movies are either origin movies or the safe bad guy, the well-known, the Lex Luthor, the Joker. Nolan impressed me with the first movie by using Ra's al Ghul because he's actually a very important Batman character, especially in the animated series, in the comic books, but he was really never portrayed in the TV show, in any of the other movies. So it really showed me something that he was willing to take that character. It is an important character in Batman's myth. The version seen on screen wasn't quite the same way it was in the comics, but the elements were there.
How about Scarecrow?
Well, Scarecrow was portrayed, obviously by himself, Ra's al Ghul was a big baddie, let's say, but there had to be like somebody that Batman could beat the snot out of, and that turned out in a way to be the Scarecrow. So that was okay. Sometimes having too many bad guys, it starts to turn into, La Cage aux Folles. But in this case, it was good. By The Dark Knight, again, two bad guys, but Harvey's turned into Big Harv, which was really Two-Face. That was more of a sad guy.
He's a tragic villain.
He was a bad guy, but you felt his pain rather than being angry at him and wanting to see him get his butt kicked. And obviously it affected Batman too, and Bruce Wayne, because it was his friend. Going with Bane, it is really impressive to me that they went that direction, because Bane breaks Batman, literally, in the comic book. If you can find it, if you're interested in Batman enough, if you find the trade paperbacks, or even, I'm sure you can go to comic shops that may or may not still exist in most people's areas and try to find those comics. It is a very impressive and very upsetting storyline, because as a Batman fan, your guy is basically dead. Batman was done. Batman was broken. Who knew? There was another guy actually becoming Batman at some point to keep the myth going. but it was an intense storyline.
Right, and his physical presence is overwhelming.
And you got that in this movie, that intensity. Obviously, a 2-hour and 45-minute movie or a year's worth of comics, you obviously cut things out or change some things here and there. But I was impressed that he went with Bane and brought you the full Monty. Batman was broken.
Now, it's cool that they also show you that, Batman is not the superpower superhero. He's the technological
he's a man.
superhero.
He's just a strong man with a lot of guts.
And a lot of technology. And what was cool about it is that, as opposed to in the previous films, where between his moderate strength and technology, his suit that gives him a little extra more strength and all his weapons, with Bane, none of that works. He's just not the type of guy that you can just zap him with a little taser or something and the guy would just go down. No. By the time you're done with this film, it's like he needs more than just himself to defeat Bane. Now, with this other woman that he becomes enamored with, it's a different situation because he's kind of fooled basically by her. He's tricked, and that works pretty well. Now, this film, as opposed to the first two other films, also has a lot of, I don't know if you can call it controversy, but a lot of people that disliked the manner in which the film went. Certain websites, I know Ain't It Cool, had people that liked it and people that hated it. And there's a lot of complaints about certain aspects of the film. And I do agree with some of them. In other words, as far as I'm concerned, to me, this is as good as the first film in terms of where it fits. I would say it's almost a tie.
To me, this is the best Batman movie I've ever seen. From Michael Keaton onward. I liked aspects of Keaton. I liked Val Kilmer as Batman. But this, to me, was the best incarnation of a Batman movie on screen to me.
Well, I don't have the comic book background that you have in terms of being able to compare it to a certain series that came out. For me, my favorite one was still the second one.
Okay.
To me, the second one is a tighter, more menacing, darker film. And I know a lot of people say it's too depressing, it's too dark. And to me, it works for this character. I don't think you can take somebody like Superman or even Spider-Man and make him this dark. The first film, obviously, when you do an origins film, you can spend at least half of that film working on the origin story. So the first film has the origin story going forward. This film is trying to wrap it all up. And in the process, yes, we are introduced to new characters that are really cool new characters, but I felt that the middle of the film was a little too long. It was certain things were taking too long. By the time you get to the third act of the film, that's when things really start picking up and it's like full throttle. There were a lot of complaints also that fall under the, how realistic should the film be? Certain things are like, well, this would never happen in a city this big or this or that or the other. And a lot of that stuff seems to kind of fall under the, well, you know what? It's a comic book. You can't really apply too much logic to the way certain people act or react. As opposed to real life, like a real drama.
I did notice some of that. The assistant chief, whatever Matthew Modine's character was ranked, he shows up the door. He's got his nice sweater on, his nice Ralph Lauren sweater on, and his wife's in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Honey, who is it? It's almost like, wait a minute, this is a city under siege, if anything, and a city whose rich people or considered rich or well-off people are being run from their homes and stuff. But meanwhile, he's still there answering the door like he's there on a holiday or a weekend or something like that. I did notice that. It did make me look and say, wait a minute. But it didn't bother me as much as I expected, like you said, from reading reviews on Ain't It Cool and things like that.
Right. Speaking of Matthew Modine, to me, that's a completely separate situation. I don't understand why. I'm surprised nobody saw it while they're shooting this film. To me, Matthew Modine was completely miscast in this film. I know he's a good actor because I've seen him do some good stuff, but for some reason he came off bad, like he wasn't acting properly. He comes off, I don't know if you could call it awkward or campy or something. He was doing things over the top, and his character, I don't think it's supposed to be that over the top. So I couldn't understand what was wrong with that character.
I didn't like him. I found him very unlikable, but a couple people had kind of spilled the beans that they thought he was miscast, including you. And so I kind of had my antenna out expecting it to be bad. And he wasn't as bad as I expected based on the things I had heard. But he didn't bother me in terms of his acting. It bothered me in terms of the portrayal of this guy who, okay, he went and hid, but he's kind of just back at his house like he's on vacation. But then he comes back as a hero, and I forgot about it. I forgave him, let's say, because he had a heroic turn at the end.
Yeah, it's weird because to me it was the opposite. To me it was his performance, not his character. I don't mind him being a jerk because I think they want to make him a jerk. He's supposed to be the opposite of Gordon and the opposite of John Blake. You know, John Blake is a young guy who wants to go and figure things out, but he can't get Gordon's help because Gordon is in the hospital, and this dumbass is just not helping him and basically standing in the way of everything.
Another thing that some people, including you, brought up to my attention is the ease in which Bruce Wayne beds Miranda.
Oh, yeah,
Let me just tell you how this happened. Again, we're taking a history of two characters and trying to make it fit into a movie that's already jam-packed into 2 hours and 45 minutes. And basically, Talia, who is Ra's al Ghul's daughter in the comics, is very important in the Batman mythology. And it's almost as if Batman was ever going to have a wife, that was as close to it in the comics. Now, they had to try to make you believe that she was important to Bruce, and I guess that relationship, even though it happened seemingly like over dinner, there had to be some sort of connection other than just a business relationship.
Of course.
And so...
But that was the problem.
Having that intimacy and trying to get you to believe it. So when she turned, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that, he fell for that. But... it is awkward. There might be a scene or two missing, perhaps. Then it would have been 3 hours, 10, who knows?
Maybe that's the issue because, one of my complaints is the fact that I felt the film was a little too long. But ironically, for a film that's too long, and believe me, I'm usually not complaining about character development, not enough romance, not enough, relationships. But in this case, it did feel kind of quick that he falls for her like super fast, and next thing you know, they're rolling in the sheets. I don't know. It felt like if you have all this time, make us believe that he's really falling for her, the way he fell for the other girl from the previous films.
Now, since we mentioned this, the thing that bugged me, I thought Anne Hathaway was like a wonderful Selena Kyle. That's her character's name. And it actually helped that they didn't call her Catwoman or, it made it more believable. We didn't have a fancy name. Oh, the Catwoman is out. It's like you saw some newspaper clippings that said a cat burglar or the cat struck again or something like that. But the fact that, okay, she's Selena Kyle. Okay, if you're even half of a Batman fan, you've stumbled upon that name, or if you've seen the Batman Returns, I guess, was the one that Michelle Pfeiffer was in.
Yeah.
And it was fine. And she was gorgeous. I mean, I didn't expect to like her. I can take her or leave her in her other roles that I've seen, but she really looked good. I was like, meow, okay. And it was especially cool that I guess they were like infrared glasses or something, that when they flipped up, they looked like ears, and then they flipped down and they were the actual apparatus over her mask. But let me tell you something. The one thing, if you're going to pick on Miranda and Bruce bedding in the when the power's out at his mansion, the one thing that bothered me is, okay, we've got a bomb. There's essentially, 5 minutes left before this bomb goes off. And they're kissing. They're getting hot and heavy or something at the very end after Bane's been, I guess, neutralized, and they're having a smooch. It's like, wait a minute. We've got to get this bomb out, out of the 6 mile limit, and let's have a quick smooch. That was the one thing that I'm like, come on. My friend said he saw me look. He thought I hated the movie. It turned out I loved the movie. I just thought, come on, there's a little, but, they got to give the kids something.
Well, I like the fact that this version of Catwoman is not the insane character from, like you said, from the Burton film. The Burton film, Michelle Pfeiffer's character.
Well, that's a Tim Burtonism right there, because Selena Kyle was a cunning thief in the comics and had a relationship with Batman. Batman would have had a relationship with her. They were very close in a lot of the comic books, except she's a criminal and he's not. And she wasn't going to necessarily change her stripes or, her whatever for him exactly. And he wasn't going to forgive the fact that, she's committing crimes. So it was believable that they did wind up together in a way. That didn't bother me too much because it was portrayed well. Tim Burton has his own spin on things because it's Tim Burton, I'm surprised it turns out that Johnny Depp didn't somehow show up in a Batman movie back then.
Yeah, no kidding. I also enjoyed the cameos that they threw in this film. You got to see, the Scarecrow character as the doctor running those phony baloney trials. They were
the kangaroo court.
Yeah, it was cool to see that. And, some actors that I'm used to seeing on television, the cop on the bridge, he's one of the cops from Dexter. The FBI Secret Service guy that comes to help the people in the city, he's a guy from Rescue Me. So the film is jam-packed.
Yeah, there were some people that you recognize, yep.
Right, yeah, the film is jam-packed with people that we're used to seeing, and I'm sure there's even more that we probably don't realize. I mean, even the mayor is back, he's Nestor Carbonell from Lost.
There was Daggett's Major Domo was from Torchwood.
Oh.
He was one of the main characters in Torchwood, the Doctor Who spinoff. So, like you said, there's people from different genre shows and movies that we like that popped up.
Yeah, and one of Bane's top henchmen is the guy who used to be on the series No Ordinary Family. So Christopher Nolan likes to pack the film with a lot of pretty well-known people.
Now, we were overlooking one really important role, though, and that's Tom Hardy, who has impressed us in so many different movies, and we've talked about him. It almost could be anybody. But, yeah, that's Tom Hardy. What do you think of that? I had some opinions. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, it's a little difficult because the Tom Hardy I know and I like, I didn't see much of him because of the fact that you never really see his face and you never see his acting much, because this is just a physical character. And just like you said, this could have been played by anybody because his voice is even distorted.
It's funny you mentioned the voice. That's the one thing. Oh, and we will. I mean, it's a combination of Sean Connery and Box from Logan's Run. If anybody listened to our old show or saw Logan's Run, it's Roscoe Lee Brown meeting up with Sean Connery. And I expect you to die, Batman. His voice bugged me a little bit.
It was a little weird, and granted that this was the toned-down version of the voice, which when they originally played that teaser trailer that we got to see, his voice was almost completely irrecognizable. You couldn't tell what the hell he was saying.
Well, we were sold a bill of goods then, because I recall either in Entertainment Weekly or somebody asking Nolan, is this it? Is this really? Oh, this is the voice. That's what you're going to see. And there's no way. That was on set. That was the voice that they recorded. It's kind of like when I watched the deleted scenes of Star Wars, and they've got Dave Prowse mouthing the lines of Darth Vader. And, he's acting his heart out. You can hear it, but there's no way in hell they were ever going to use Dave Prowse's voice.
No, but you can look it up on the internet. I mean, everybody can find it. There is somebody put together the comparison between that first trailer and and by trailer, I'm talking about the plane hijacking sequence.
And wasn't that an impressive scene when you finally saw it finished?
It was incredible. It was something out of a James Bond film.
Like, people kept saying it's like James Bond, and it was very similar to the plane scene of catching Robert Davi, bad guy, in License to Kill. But man, in IMAX, it blew my mind when I saw it.
Like I said, they did a comparison, not shot by shot, line by line, and you can hear the difference. The final product, you can understand what he's saying, distorted, but you can understand. The original one, you're out there going, I'm not sure what happened. But yeah, that whole sequence was awesome.
It really did blow my mind as an open type of thing. Like, okay, there's a little rendition element there and how they're trying to do some little psychological, turn the screws on some of these guys. And when he reveals himself and then the plane, basically they're hijacking the plane. Wow, it just blew my mind. I really didn't expect to like this movie. And talking about it now reminds me, I almost want to see it again.
Oh, I definitely want to see it again. I'm sure, it's difficult to talk about it a little bit because of the fact that because it's not my favorite, I almost, don't want to sound like I didn't like it, but I did like it. It's just that it's not my favorite.
Like I said, it was my favorite. And I almost feel ashamed that I talked bad about it and thought that, I'll show you guys. I don't like this. Like, I'm going to be too cool for this. And I surprised myself.
Well, you were telling me that I was going to like it no matter what, and I ended up being the one having a little problem with it. But It's funny that, on most of his films, he likes to delve into somewhat controversial subjects, but from what I understand, Christopher Nolan doesn't like to really take sides. And one of the things that was brought up before the film was made, while the film was being played, the political aspects of the film, he's talking about this here, he's talking about that here. One of the quotes I read about it is that he likes to point out situations where people, now in these particular films, because you're dealing with superheroes and supervillains, how supervillains can take advantage of whatever cracks we have in our society to have people turn on each other. And this is one where, when you look at the manner in which Bane is manipulating people, it's a little bit, we kind of saw a little bit of this with the Joker, how he manipulated the prisoners and stuff like this. But Bane takes it like even a step further in terms of trying to really convince people. On one hand, he's like a terrorist type of individual. He's holding a society hostage and he's forcing them to do things that, are kind of against their own interest, if you think about it. And he's playing both sides of the issues.
I think they took advantage of the opportunity to market it around the time of the Occupy Wall Street. And, Occupy Gotham was the quotes I would hear. And okay, I thought about it. Then the closer the movie came out to, and it's at its release, I started to hear things that Bane versus Bane, the Mitt Romney company, and now I'm like, that annoyed me, and that kind of set me off. It's like, I want to see Batman. I don't want to see modern politics. And then I started to hear quotes, okay, well, Obama is Batman and Romney is Bane. But then I'm hearing, then the other people are turning the tables. And it started to bug me that would a movie be so bold as to jump on that political bandwagon of 2012 election? And I'm like, yeah, a movie would do that. But let me tell you, seeing the movie, it was complete opposite. There were elements of the Occupy and the left side of things, and there were elements of sticking it to Obama, which would be the right side of things, because Bane has a little soliloquy talking about how if you offer hope, and hope is what the people will cling to, and then you take it away from them type of thing or something like that. And that's like, well, basically, well, hope is Obama's keyword, and Bane is Bane Capital, which is, I guess, Romney's, Achilles heel at the moment. And it was sticking it to both of them in a way. And I guess I like that. I'd rather you stick it to both people than to take a side that might alienate half your audience.
But you don't even have to be political about it. I mean, again, if you go back to the fact that this is superheroes, supervillains, even a kid could understand, I think, that the supervillain, in this case Bane, because he's the physical villain we see here. Forget about the, who's behind Bane, but he is playing everybody. And there's no doubt, because the audience of the picture understands, because they're seeing what is his real intent. It's destruction.
He wants society to eat itself. And here's one quick thing that I noticed. If you go with his point of view that the rich, and Selena Kyle says, oh, there's a storm coming to all you rich people, basically. And Bane comes, and Bane's this, he just creates chaos in the Gotham society. And you see the scene of the rich basically being dragged or chased out of their comfy, warm homes, and the oppressed bad guys being released from jail, and basically society turning the tables on each other. And then the kangaroo court with Cillian Murphy, which is the Scarecrow, and this whole thing happening. But then you think about it. If you think about it a little bit, okay, well, the poorest among us will finally be empowered and go after the richest, the 1%ers, whatever you want to call them, and they'll get their reckoning, and there'll be social justice. But then you start to say, okay, well, the poorest have now been emboldened and the rich have been put in their place. Well, little by little, it's like the old saying, I kept quiet when they went after the Jews and I kept quiet after they went after the Gypsies. But then what happened when they came after me? It's, I'm probably quoting it wrong. At some point in this society of Gotham, if we saw it go to its, ultimate point, the poorest go after the rich, but then how long before it gets to you? And then, right now, the regular working guy who happens to have a nice house and some kids and a computer and a couple decent cars is considered rich to somebody who doesn't have that. And so at some point, Gotham literally just eat itself. If they didn't enter that whole bomb element, which was, I think, the weakest part of the plot. But, that would have been the psychological battle within Gotham of the good guys and the bad guys who eventually... Well, who is the good guys and the bad guys? There's always going to be somebody who wants what somebody else has, and it would just be this ultimate, cat and mouse chase that just went around in a circle at a certain point. Because once the poor got their power and the rich were put in their place, well, now, wait a minute. Now the poor are the 1%ers in a sense, and the rich now will band together and say, hey, we've got to fight back. And it would be this constant battle of who can get who.
Well, that's why, by you being the audience member, you're privy to information that the characters are not privy to. And that is, like I said before, Bane is turning people against each other. He's taking advantage of a popular frustration versus somewhat of a minority that seems to be the oppressor of this group. And as an audience member, you're the one who know the real plan. He's just buying time to get to do what the League of Shadows is trying to do. And that is to, when they see that society is a little bit out of control and they're getting too, I guess, big for their bridges or something, they wipe it out, as they hinted on in the first film.
Well, the League of Shadows was really like a MacGuffin, because Ra's al Ghul's gone. He's dead. It was just his image, it was almost like his specter, the ghost of Obi-Wan just talking, and he was gone. But Bane took that, I think there was even a line in the movie that said he was even a little bit too out there for the League of Shadows, and he was banished from them. He becomes chaos, but Miranda is really the kingpin who just uses Bane's strength and loyalty as her power, as her henchman, so she can kind of get the goal she wants to. And then once he dies and she is thwarted, then it's just a matter of, just saving the city, which is what makes Batman heroic.
And it goes back to the actual character. In other words, the idea of the Wayne family, they've always been wealthy, and for whatever
but they weren't
reason,
bad. If you're going to put a thing on it, the rich, the Waynes were always very philanthropic as far as the comic. Assuming we're talking like they're real people, but they were very philanthropic. They were benevolent. He tried himself to donate money and stuff. And there's even a quote like, he was taking care of the boys' home until a certain point where, I guess the money stopped coming in. But it wasn't like the Waynes were some, crazy people, that just took money from people.
No, but that's my point. My point is that as far as the movies go, and I don't know if the comic books went in that direction, they've always treated the Wayne family as somebody who, on one hand, they're wealthy, but on the other hand, they're always trying to make their society, their town, their city a better place. It's not
they're very altruistic. You're right. Okay, yeah, you got it. That's the way the Waynes were in the comic.
Yeah, they're not lumped into with what you would consider, a stereotypical, wealthy bad guy that just wants money and is just laughing his way to the bank. No, these are people that are, his father was a doctor, and he was.
Yeah, they weren't robber barons.
Right. They don't. I mean, I don't think they're ever portrayed that way, and I think it's done on purpose because the character of Batman cannot take sides. He can't be the Robin Hood type of character, and he can't be, the super rich type of character who doesn't care. No, this character is designed a certain way. He's a guy who has the financial means to, be somebody who's trying to right the wrongs, of society.
So what do you think can happen now going forward? I know we're focusing on this movie. Going forward, I think this is done. We're never going to see what Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character becomes. It's one of those things that we'll just never know. What do you think? There is going to be more Batman.
Yeah. Well, Christopher Nolan, I believe, already said he's done, and I believe Christian Bale said he's done. They're both done.
But Warner Brothers will put out more Batman.
Oh, yeah, they will.
Sooner rather than later. Maybe there'll be a Justice League. Maybe there'll be a Batman-Superman tie-in, which might be better in the short term before we go into the next phase of Batman alone. But what do you think?
Well, that's the key question there, is which way does Warner Brothers wants to go? Do they want to introduce Batman by himself, or do they want to introduce him in a group of other superheroes, like in the Justice League movie, kind of like an Avengers type of movie?
Yes, exactly. Based on the strength of the Avengers and based on the plan Marvel has had, and now they have phase 2 of that plan, I say the Henry Cavill Superman comes out, hoping, Warner Brothers that is, it's successful. And I guess we all should hope it's successful if we're fans of comic book movies. I have my doubts. I guess as a fan of comic book movies, we should hope it's successful. Then you have a strong Batman that just kind of finished. You have a up-and-coming strong Superman franchise beginning. Then try to do a Justice League, which is basically DC's version of the Avengers, or something like that. And basically introduce this team and have all these different personalities, then decide who and what the next Batman becomes.
Well, that's
the guy they pick. Is the guy they pick for the Justice League strong enough to carry it on his own, or do you then pick a new guy? Whoever it could be, it could be Steven Spielberg. It could just be. It could just be any number.
I think it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg type of thing. I think whatever they decide to go first, whether the individual film or the Justice League film, they're going to have to continue with whatever they pick. I don't think they can switch gears. I don't think they should switch gears, because that's going to be way too confusing for everybody. If they want to kind of maybe keep Joseph Gordon-Levitt, that might be an option. Maybe he can kind of dovetail into this. Obviously not as Batman, but maybe he could continue as a Robin or work him in somehow. That's a possibility.
Sure. They could. Like, if he became a Nightwing, that's fine, and a new Batman actor. I mean, look, Christian Bale impressed me. I've watched his work since he was Empire of the Sun and American Psycho and all the things he's done in the most recent times. He is really some kind of actor. So it's too bad we're losing him, because he's at his peak. I mean, you had a guy.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't some guy who just fit the suit. He was an impressive actor as well as fitting the suit. Right. And it's just too bad. I can guarantee you Warner Brothers did not expect this kind of success for Batman. They expected Nolan to give us a strong product because he's a good director and puts a good story together, I guess, with his brother. And I'm guaranteeing you the overwhelming success of the second movie blew them away just as much as it's blown all of us away. But now with this one too, I mean, and this one probably would have been even bigger had there not been the tragedy of people getting shot because of a crazy person during the premiere. And so I'm sure Warner Brothers realizes this was like lightning in a bottle. It could happen again, but it probably won't. These were just like really impressive creators and actors together.
Well, at this rate, the only thing we have to wait for at this moment, since the movie is completely done, is the DVD. We'll see what happens when the release comes out later this year.
Do you know if there's extra, like, I keep hearing this rumor of an extra 15 minutes to a half hour of Avengers footage that's showing up either on DVD or there was rumors of a re-release. I guess the re-release has kind of been shot down. How about for this movie? Is there a substantial amount of stuff that could turn up someplace actually in the movie? Or is it just going to be outtakes?
It's hard to say. I haven't heard any confirmed rumors yet. You know, I mean, a confirmed rumor, that's an oxymoron. But who knows? I mean, like I said, the movie felt long enough as it was. I don't know if there's more material that exists out there, but obviously if it does, that's what DVDs are for. Hopefully we'll get a little more. And, you know, I'm not advocating for a new director's cut, but I wouldn't mind seeing a couple deleted scenes here and there.
I would really like to. Like I said, I want to see it again, which it's unbelievable. I did not expect to even want to see it the first time. I didn't see the other two in the theater. And as much of a Batman fan I am, I just didn't go. I want to see more. It's a 2 hour and 45-minute movie. I could have sat there for another half hour.
One last thing I want to mention is also the music.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to stick that into. That music blew me away, especially at the end. That last part, like, I'm not an emotional guy. I'm not going to movies and I'm not crying and bringing my hanky. But if there's any music that fit that last section of movie, this was it.
No, not only that, but I mean, obviously it's the same composer that's stayed on for most of these films. But what's cool about it is that he introduced a couple of new themes in this movie that they weren't there before. You have the traditional Batman, you know, score, but he also threw in a couple of new things, these chanting things with having associated with Bane and this very quiet piano solo area that was kind of creepy. You know, they also did an excellent job.
Even the boy singing at the football, as the football game is, oh my God.
So overall, I think we're pretty satisfied. I mean, this is definitely one of my top 3 films for the summer that I enjoyed. And at this point, like we said before, let's just have the DVD come. Most likely we'll see it before Christmas, even though this was one of the last films to come out. But I'm sure they're not going to pass up the opportunity to have this for the Christmas season.
Well, when we did the review, I think earlier in the year of the trailers of these movies, we talked about Prometheus. I think we talked about Avengers. If not we, you talked about it with some of the other guys. And The Dark Knight Rises and The Hobbit we've mentioned. Now, obviously, the only thing we haven't seen yet is The Hobbit, which I don't think we're going to be disappointed. Whatever happens with The Hobbit, I think we will be impressed. But of the movies so far, Prometheus was special. Avengers was, you know, exciting. But this really, it's like it's in a different league. And I can't believe, like I said, I'm saying it. But it's almost like, okay, the Avengers was, you know, the cotton candy. This was the real deal. When you watch them together, people say it's like, all right, that's kind of like fluff. You know, that's just the fun. This is pretty heavy stuff.
Right.
This is like Shakespeare.
It depends on how you like your comics. You like your comics realistic, you like them campy, you like them fun adventure for all ages. It depends on what your flavor is. And this is definitely a different kind of flavor that I don't think anyone's been able to copy. I mean, the closest thing you can get to this, I think it's X-Men, because X-Men is a little darker than your Spider-Man or your Avengers, but this is a league of its own almost. Well, I'm going to thank, obviously, James for joining us today. And stay tuned because we're going to hear a few comments from my son Kyle so we can get a different perspective. So let's take a quick listen to Kyle and what he thought of the film. Okay, we're here with Kyle Perrone, my son, who was there with me when we went to see The Dark Knight Rises. And let's try to get a different perspective than a bunch of 40-year-old overweight, balding men who are into comic book toys and stuff like that. Let's get a perspective from somebody who's actually the proper age of what this was meant for. Kyle, what did you think of The Dark Knight Rises?
I thought it was fantastic.
Would you say it was as good as the first or the second, or how would you rate it in terms of where it fell upon, you know?
I think it was about the same as the second one. I thought it was maybe a tiny bit better, like the slightest bit better.
What were some of the new characters that we got to meet in this film that you think were good?
We got to see Bane, who I thought was, Tom Hardy played him really well. Like, he did really well with the eyes, because that's all you could really see from him, and he did really well. You also met Miranda Tate, who in the end ends up being Ra's al Ghul's daughter, which is Talia al Ghul. She's in the comics too, and you also get to see Dr. Crane again. There's a new character that's introduced in the film called John Blake, who's a police officer, rookie police officer, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And apparently his middle name is Robin, we find out at the end. And then Bruce sends him the coordinates to the Batcave, and he finds the Batcave. I wonder if they're going to pick off from the end.
What about Catwoman?
She's not much of a villain at the end, but she's basically just hanging around with Bruce and Florence. They're just basically forgetting Gotham.
Now, usually when we see these films, we get to see, similar to James Bond films, we get to see these new weapons and new hidden things and new vehicles and stuff like that. What are some of the new toys, if you will, that we got to see in this particular film? Not a lot. I mean, compared to the first two films, we got to see a lot more, but this one, there was one big item.
There's basically about 3 of them. There's the Bat, which is basically the Nolanverse equivalent of the Batwing.
Which is really a combination of it's almost like a helicopter plane kind of combination.
Yeah.
Because it seems to have somewhat has rotors.
Yeah, but it's underneath it.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of plane.
It's like a
helicopter.
It's a hovercraft, basically.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
And we also get to see the environment machine thing, which is when it's unhooked from the machine, it turns into like a nuclear bomb.
Right.
We get to see that, which I don't remember if it's from the comics or not. And then we also get to see the device, I forget what it's called, but it erases like a person's identity from where it was.
Right. They only show us like a little thumb drive or something that's supposed to be in there or something. Yeah, that we don't really get much view of it. We saw the Bat Cycle, which we've seen in previous films.
Saw that.
We didn't see the Batmobile.
Oh yeah, the Batmobile was never exploded in the last movie.
Oh, okay.
We got to see the new tumblers,
the original prototypes.
Yeah, they're smaller, and they all and some of them have like missiles, and one of them has like a cannon in the back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The way the movie ends, where would you say this movie will go to next in terms of, now, we don't know for a fact that they're going to continue this particular story in whatever reboot, remake, or whatever they're going to do next, but assuming this is the end of the way that this story is told, what do you think happens next in this particular story?
I think that Chris Nolan's trying to make the story go to John Blake basically assuming the role of Batman, but to me, I don't think it necessarily means that he's going to become Batman.
Would it be a Nightwing type of situation?
Possibly. I mean, people are thinking because his name's Robin that he would become Robin, but honestly, I think that was just like a little thing he could just stick in there, but Nightwing would be more appropriate. Like, let's say they were going to do a spin-off movies on it, Nightwing would be more appropriate. And then you can have like Batwoman and all those other like Batman followers that they have in the comics, and they could all like unite and fight like the Joker if he breaks out again, and CGI or something. I don't know.
One final question. Of all the 3 films, who was your favorite bad guy?
I thought the Joker was very good. Scarecrow I didn't really care about that much. I would say it would be a tie between Joker and Bane. They were both done very well.
So you would recommend this movie to everybody?
Of course.
Cool. Well, thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up for today. I'd like to thank both James and Kyle for participating on today's discussion, and we will see you guys soon when we do another one of these crazy shows. This one was a little longer than usual because this was one of our, big favorite films for the summer, and it being the last chapter of the Batman trilogy, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, it deserved a little more time than your average film. So once again, thank you, James, for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will see you here next time on Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
There's a storm coming.
You sound like you're looking forward to it.
I'm adaptable.
What are you? I'm Gotham's reckoning.
Did they kill him?
I'm not sure.
Why didn't you just kill me?
Your punishment must be more severe.
Do you think he's coming back?
I don't know. Why would you run, Bane?
You should be as afraid of him as I am.
I won't bury you. I've buried enough members.
to the Wayne family.
You don't owe these people anymore. You've given them everything.
Not everything. Not yet.
My mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men.
This isn't a car.
Stop.